Good Shabbat Shalom to all you brothers and sisters. I'd like to start out with the blast of the trumpets and the shofars, a shout out to our Yah. All right, today we start a new book. A new book in the Torah cycle. In Hebrew, it is Shemot, or names. In the King James Version, from Greek origin, we say Exodus, meaning departure. This Greek word is also used for physical death in Luke 9:31 and 2 Peter 1:15, noting or talking about the death of Jesus and Peter. Being right at 6 chapters for this Torah portion, we have many things that we could talk about. Moses and the Tebah, or the ark. Moses slaying a man and yet still being used by God. Moses at Midian, the burning bush, the name, the assignment and signs from Yah, the confrontation with Pharaoh, and many more things that we could talk about. But I want to go to chapter 1 after briefly touching on the name. And for that I will read from the Brenton Septuagint, briefly touching on the name. I'll go to the Septuagint at Shemot, or Exodus 3:11, and read through 15. And it reads, "And Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and that I should bring out the children of Israel from the land of Egypt? And Elohim spoke to Moses, saying, I will be with thee, and this shall be the sign to thee, that I shall send thee forth. When thou bringest out my people out of Egypt, then ye shall serve Elohim in this mountain. And Moses said to Elohim, Behold, I shall go forth to the children of Israel, and shall say to them, The Elohim of your fathers has sent me to you, and they will ask me, well, what is his name? A lot of people say they believe in God and they don't know the name. What shall I say to them? And Elohim spoke to Moshe, saying, I am the being. And he said, Thus shall you say to the children of Israel, The being has sent me to you. And Elohim said again to Moshe, Thus shalt thou say to the sons of Israel, The Lord God of our fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, and the God of Yaakov, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and my memorial to generations of generations." Now, I just thought that you might like to hear this translation of the name. As soon as I read it, I ran to my wife and said, look what this one says. You know, you've all heard, Iye Asher Iye, Ahaya Asher Ahaya, I am that I am. But I'm reading this year in the Septuagint just because I would like to see what the Septuagint says. So I bought a copy, and I'm reading through the Torah this year in the Septuagint. But when I got to that, I am the being. And that's all he says, the being. And I thought that was interesting. But when I looked up in a regular dictionary, a being, we all know what a being is, an entity, but it has to do with the total existence of something. So it does describe the Father quite well there. But I want to go back to chapter 1, back to chapter 1 in Shemot. But first, I want to make a very profound statement. The God of Yasharel, and that's how I like to say Israel, upright with God, The God of Yasharel, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac and Jacob, Yah for short. He's a God who is pro-choice. Now, while you gather stones to stone me, I will repeat what I just said. The God of Yasharel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Yah, he is a pro-choice God. And now we'll go to the Torah reading. Shemot 1, and I'll be reading out of the greens. Exodus 1. And it reads, and these were the names, that's where we get Shemot, of the sons of Israel who came into Egypt with Jacob. Each one with his house they came in. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And were all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob, 70 souls. Septuagint, and even in the King James New Testament, it says 75. So that's something you can check out on your own to see why there's a difference there. And we know if we put these names together, we can also get a story out of the names, but we've done that before, so I won't do it here. And they were 70 souls, Joseph being in Egypt already. And died Joseph, or Yosef, and all his brothers, and all generation that. That makes me wonder how, when people can say they can trace their lineage back and all that, all these brothers died and were probably buried in Egypt. We know a couple of them were taken to the land. So how do you, without a body, trace your lineage back to these actual souls? And the sons of Israel were fruitful and teeming, and multiplied and became strong, very, very, and was filled the land with them. And arose a new king over Egypt, who had not known Joseph. And he said to his people, behold, the people of the sons of Israel are many and stronger than we. Come, let us deal slyly toward him, lest he multiply, and it shall be that when occurs war, will add also he with our enemies, and will fight against us, and go up from the land. See how he says there, let us deal wisely with them. It's a different word than the serpent in the garden, and we're going to touch on that in a minute. But it's still the same thing. You deal in cunning ways to get Yah's people to fall or to corrupt themselves. And many people fall for the tricks. But maybe that's why Messiah told us that we should be wise as serpents and unmixed as the dove. And they put over them slave masters, so as to afflict them with their burdens. And he built cities of storage for Pharaoh, he being Israel, Yasharel, Python, and Ramses. And as much as they afflicted him, so he multiplied, and so he spread. And they were afraid before the sons of Israel, and made to serve Egypt the sons of Israel with harshness, and they made bitter their lives. Through work hard in the clay and in the bricks, and in all kind of work in the field, everywhere they went, the work was just harder and harder, whether it was building the bricks or working out in the fields. All their work which they made them do with harshness. And said the king of Egypt to the midwives Hebrew, of whom the name of one was Siphrah. Now if you take the word shofar and trace it back to its root, and take this word Shiphrah and trace it back to its root, it's the same word, and it means to glisten. Shofar and Siphrah come from the root word to glisten. And the second was Puah. And that means to glitter. To glisten and glitter is what these women are all about. And he said, and when you midwife the Hebrew women and you look on the birth stools, if it's a son, it is, you will kill him. And if a daughter, it is, it shall live. Now, do we see anybody perhaps in our world today dealing slyly with not only God's people but all throughout the world, trying to get them to do away with their own children? And many fall for it. And we read that earlier about, and the fear of Yah, it continues, and feared the midwives. Aleph Tav Ha Elohim, God, and not they did do as said to them the king of Egypt. Pro-choice. You can choose to do what Pharaoh tells you, or you can choose to do what God tells you. And they kept alive the male children, and called the king of Egypt to the midwives and said to them, why do you do this thing, and keep alive the male children? And said the midwives to Pharaoh, because not like women the Egyptians are the Hebrew women, for vigorous, or in the Hebrew, because they believe in life, they are. Before comes to them the midwife, they bear, and dealt well. Before it comes to them the midwife, and they bear, and dealt well Elohim with the midwives, and teamed the people, and became strong very. And it was because they feared the midwives, Aleph Tav Ha Elohim. He made for them houses. In the Septuagint it says he gave them families. And commanded Pharaoh all his people, saying, every son that is born into the Nile you will cast him, and every daughter you shall keep alive. So, since we can't get them to fall for our tricks, we're just going to find a way to take it on ourselves to take them out. Now, there's nothing new under the sun. What was will be. And concerning this, if it's a son, as you're at the birth stools, is that happening today? You got an old commercial about salsa, but it says, New York City, get a rope. Well, in New York City a year or two ago, they passed a law where you can, all the way up until 9 months, just the same thing that's happening here. You can abort that child. But you have to choose to do that right now, or else later on maybe the world is going to find a way to try to literally take out God's people on their own, as the end of this chapter is. So, who here today, though, believes that God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, cannot stop anything that man does at any time? Does anybody believe that? That God, if he wanted to, couldn't stop anything going on from the beginning of the book to the end of the book? He's got that power. But he's got his own ways. And like I said, he's a God that is pro-choice for a time. He's pro-choice for a time. Example 1 from the El, the God that tells the beginning from the end, and so that is written in Isaiah 46:10. So we'll go back to the genesis of things in Genesis 2:7. And I'm going to read Genesis 2:7 through 17. And formed Yah Elohim the man dust from the ground, and he blew into his nostrils breath of life, and became the man a soul living. And planted Yah Elohim a garden in Eden to the east. And he put there the man whom he had formed, and made spring Yah Elohim from the ground every tree that's pleasant to the sight and good for food. And the tree of life was in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And a river went out from Eden to water the garden, and from there it was divided and became into 4 heads. The name of the one is Pison. It is the one surrounding all the land of Havilah, where gold is, and the gold of land that good is. There is bdellium gum resin, and stone of the onyx. And the name of the river second is Gihon. It is the one surrounding all the land of Cush. And the name of the river third is Tigris. It is the one going east of Assyria. And the river fourth is Euphrates. And took Yah Elohim the man, and put him in the garden of Eden to till it, and to keep it, to guard it. And commanded Yah Elohim to the man, saying, of every tree of the garden surely you may eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, not you shall eat from it. For in the day of your eating from it, surely you shall die. So the choice is presented right from the beginning. A God of pro-choice. Could he not made a bunch of robots if he wanted to? Kind of like what the world wants to do now, to plug you in and have you do what they want you to do. But he wants you to do it out of love for him. And from the very beginning, he put before the man and the woman a choice. Just as we've seen in the beginning of the book of Exodus. There's a choice. You can obey Pharaoh, or you can fear Yah and obey him. Kind of like what we're doing today. We're obeying the commandment, right? The 4th commandment. The Sabbath will always be the 7th day. El Sábado. So the choice is presented. And we know, like Pharaoh, though, a cunning one comes, creeps in to deal slyly with the man and the woman. And they fell for it. Example 2, the Word. That is the Messiah himself, because the Word is the Messiah and vice versa. He says in Deuteronomy 30, and we will read all 20 verses because they're so good. We'll see our pro-choice God giving instructions again. Deuteronomy 30. And we will read all 20 verses. And it reads, and it shall be when have come upon you all things these, the blessing and the curse. The blessing if you choose right. The curse if you don't choose right. Which I have set before you. Now I kind of circled this when I was putting this together. And you bring back to your heart, among all the nations, which shall banish you, Yah. So that's really talking to many of us today. Because whether we know that we're his people physically or not, the scripture is clear that they've been banished to all nations. So, and you bring back to your heart among all the nations which shall banish you, Yah, your God, to there, and shall turn back to Yah, your God, and listen to his voice. Isn't there a big movement of Torah now? This is being fulfilled in our day. Whether it's just the start of it, the middle of it, the end of it, I don't know. But this is being fulfilled in our day because people are starting to listen to his voice again. Because like I said, this word is Messiah and vice versa. So Jesus didn't say anything new in the New Testament. According to all that I am commanding you today, you and your sons, with all your heart and with all your soul, then will turn Yah your God your captivity, and he will pity you and return, he's coming back, and gather you from all the nations which has scattered you, Yah, your Elohim, to there. Now, didn't Messiah say the same thing, basically? That there's going to come a time when he's going to gather people from the four corners, not only of earth, but even the four corners of the heavens. Same words. If should be your outcast at the end of the heavens, Messiah said that, from there shall gather you Yah, your Elohim. And from there he shall take you, and shall bring you Yah, your Elohim, into the land which possessed your fathers. So you will possess it, and he will do you good, and multiply you more than your fathers. And will circumcise Yah, your Elohim, your heart. We've talked about that before. What does that really mean? To circumcise your heart. Just like the physical circumcision, you're removing all that fleshly stuff, right? If we're going to be circumcised in our heart, we got to start cutting away all those fleshly desires of the world and of the flesh that we have. And will circumcise Yah, your Elohim, your heart, and the heart of your seed, to love Ahava, Yah, and it actually says Aleph Tav, Yah, your Elohim, which being to me is the Father and Son, with all your heart and with all your soul, so that you may live, and put Yah, your Elohim, so that you may live, and will put Yah, your Elohim, all curses these on your enemies. Wouldn't that be nice? And on those hating you, who have persecuted you. And you shall return and heed the voice of Yah, and do all his commandments, which I am commanding you today. Book of Revelation, right? Those who have the testimony of Jesus and keep his commandments. That's at the end of the persecution. It mentioned those people. And will make you abundant, Yah, your Elohim, in every work of your hand, the fruit of your womb, and the fruit of your cattle, and the fruit of your ground, for good. Now he has a way when he wants to even make the barren fruitful. For will again Yah rejoice over you for good, as he rejoiced over your fathers. For you shall listen to the voice of Yah your Elohim, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in the book of Torah this. For you shall return to Yah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul. Everything he's saying here sounds totally like an end of days thing to me. Because he's saying all this stuff, and he says, just like your fathers. That means he's talking to sons down the road. For commandment this which I am commanding you today, not too wonderful it is for you, and not too far off it is, not in the heavens it is, that you should say, who shall go up for us into the heavens and get it, and cause us to hear it, that we may do it. Anybody remember Paul quoting these same words? Nothing new in the New Testament. And not beyond the sea it is, that you should say, who shall cross over for us to region the beyond the sea, and take it for us, and cause us to hear it, that we may do it. For is near to you the word, very, in your mouth and in your heart. Now doesn't he also tell you in several other places, take this and eat it up? That's how you get it in your mouth. It's not a literal thing in most cases. You're absorbing, you're digesting these words. Not only do they go in, but they're inscribed on your very heart, that you may do it. Does that happen right away? Or is this a journey? Of course, you gotta study it first to know what you ought to do. Behold, I have set before you today life and good. This is the choice. This is the pro-choice L right here. Behold, I have set before you today life and good, and death and evil. Which one you want? In that I am commanding you today to love Yah your Elohim, to walk in His ways, and to keep His commandments, and His statutes, and His judgments, and you shall live and multiply, and shall bless you Yah your Elohim, in the land where you are going to possess it. But if you turn away your heart and not do listen, and you are impelled and bow down to gods other, and serve them, I have declared to you today. That just made me think of this thing I seen recently. I seen two different sources, so I'm assuming it's true. But when he's speaking to gods other, in our own United States of America, in the Capitol Rotunda of Illinois, I think it was, they have a swaddling baby Baphomet next to the other nativity scene so they can give equal time to the gods. And we know that's a trick too, so they can just, well, if we get rid of that garbage, we got to get rid of your stuff too. But I seen that on two different sources in a Capitol Rotunda, they call it. I still call them a Kuba, and I think there's a reason why the dome is everywhere like that, because that's the same word that Kuba or Simeon, or not Simeon, but Zimri of the tribe of Simeon took Cosby, which means lies, and went in under the dome with her. But I think that's why there's rotundas or Kubas everywhere. So you take these other gods and you serve them. I have declared to you today that certainly you shall perish. Not you shall prolong your days on the land which you are crossing over, the Jordan, to go in there to possess it. I call to witness against you today the heavens and the earth, that's all creation, as a witness against us, that life and death I have set before you, the blessing and the curse. There it is, God of choice. Putting it all right in front of you, just like in the beginning, those trees. Here it is. Now I'm going to ask you to choose what you want. The blessing and the curse. And then he recommends what you should do. Therefore choose life, that you may live, and your seed, to love Yah your Elohim, to listen to His voice, and to cling to Him. For He is your life. He's telling you right there to cling to Him. He is your very life. Don't go serving other gods. The choice is yours, though. He's not going to make the call for you. For He is your life, and the length of your days, to live on the land which swore Yah to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give it to them. And He's still not done fulfilling that promise either. So there we go. Two examples already, besides the one in Exodus, of the God who is pro-choice for a time. Example 3. This one is a sure type and shadow of Yahusha. Joshua, Jesus. Yahusha 1, if you will, in the book of Joshua. A sure type and shadow. And when we get here, we'll see that it's not even really Joshua or Yahusha or Jesus number 1 in the Bible, whose words these are, because he's going to tell you whose words they are. And we're going to read as example number 3 of the God who is pro-choice for us, Joshua 24, and I'll read verse 1 through 15. And it reads, "And gathered Joshua all the tribes of Yasharel to Shechem, and called for the elders of Israel, and for its heads, and for its judges, and for its officers." And look what it says here. "And they placed themselves before Elohim." They presented themselves before God. "And said Joshua to all the people," this is where he's given credentials to who's speaking, "Thus says Yah Elohai Yasharel, the God of Israel, beyond the river lived your fathers in the past." That's kind of like a reverse Hebrew there, because that's the word it uses there, beyond the crossing over, which is where we get the word Hebrew. "Beyond the river in reverse lived your fathers in the past. Terah, the father of Abraham, and father of Nahor, that snorer. And they lived, and they served gods other. And I took your father Abraham from beyond the river, and caused him to go out through all the land of Canaan, and multiplied his seed. And Yah gave him Isaac. And I gave to Isaac Jacob and Esau. And I gave to Esau Mount Seir, Devil's Mountain, to possess it. And Jacob and his sons, well, they went down to Egypt. And I sent Moshe and Aharon, and plagued Egypt, as I did in the midst. And later I brought out you." See how it's connecting what I'm reading here back to the story we're just getting into of Exodus or Shemot. He's recounting all these things, and they've already entered in the land, but he's still going to be a God of choice. "And I brought out your fathers from Egypt, and you went into the sea, and chased the Egyptians after your fathers with chariots and with horsemen into the sea of reeds, Yam Suf. And they cried to Yah, and he set thick darkness between you and the Egyptian, and brought upon him the sea and covered him." It says in another place, they sank like rocks. "And saw your eyes that which I have done in Egypt. And you lived in the wilderness days many. And I brought you into the land of the Amorite, those giants, who lived beyond the Jordan. And they fought with you, and I gave them into your hand, and seized their land, and I destroyed them before you. And arose Balak, the son of Zippor, the king of Moab, and fought against you." Now Balak also means destroyer, I believe. He's a type of the Satan. Always somebody wanting to destroy Yah's people. "And fought against Israel, and sent and called for Balaam, the son of Beor, to curse you. But not I was willing to listen to Balaam. And he blessed greatly you. And I delivered you out of his hand. And you crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho, and fought against you the masters, the Baals, the Baali Jericho, it says, of the Amorite, the masters of the giants, and the Perizzites, and the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Girgashites, the Hivite, and the Jebusite. And I keep stressing I because it's Yah doing all these things, not in our own power. And I gave them into your hand, and I sent before you the hornet, and it cast out them before you. 2 kings of the Amorite, not by your sword, nor by your bow. And I have given to you a land which you have not labored for, and cities which you have not built, and you live in them, of vineyards and olive yards, which not you did plant. You are eaten now. You are eaten of them. Now then, fear Yah and serve Him in sincerity and truth. That's the name of this particular congregation, right? Emet. He's telling you to fear Him and serve Him, just like those ladies in the book of Shemot that feared Yah, in sincerity and truth, and turn away from the gods which served your fathers beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve Yah. And if it is evil in your eyes to serve Yah, choose. Choose for yourselves today whom you will serve, whether the gods whom served your fathers, which were beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorite, whose you are dwelling in land theirs. But as for me and my house, we will serve Aleph Tav Yah. We will serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, any question there's not many gods, whether they be true gods or just fallen ones who set themselves up to be something that they're not? But you're going to have a choice to choose. And there's things, like I said, even showing in that example I gave in the rotunda, where they're worshiping the actual goat demon out in the open. And there's going to be many more, I'm afraid, and even supernatural things that you may choose to go this way or that way. Or you can just choose to believe in Yah until the appearing of His blessed Son, Yahushua HaMashiach. Okay, so some things we know. We know that Egypt of old is a shadow of the world today, because there's nothing new under the sun. We read the book and we read the book, and we know the world is not going to get better by man. There's no kingdom now. There's no dominion theology. I mean, people preach that stuff. I don't believe it. It's not going to be better by man. Why? Because if you read the book, the judgment has already been set. And we know what direction it's going. And we are given that choice until that judgment comes. So we know the judgment has been set, and it's not going to be getting better by man. We know that we are seeing things going on in today's world that Yah does not approve of, right? See it everywhere. If you watch news sources here and there, you see a lot more. So there's all kinds of things going on that Yah does not approve of. But He will let man choose until man comes to the very end of himself. Isn't that the way He's always operated? Right up until it was just about hopeless. Man has come to the end of himself. Then He steps in and shows Himself to be Yah, the God of Israel, and shows Himself to be strong. And He's going to do it again in the end times. We also know that if we fear Elohim, like those ladies, Sifra and Puah, the glistening and the glittering ladies, the Hebrew women, we also know that if we fear Elohim, we can help spiritually birth more Hebrews. Did you follow me on that? Help spiritually birth more Hebrews and say no to the world system. We're going to keep going the way Yah says. Even though the rest of the world wants to go this way and that way, even if it's under the title of Christianity, or if they even want to go after other gods like that Baphomet, we're going to still try to birth more spiritual Hebrews into this world by proclaiming Emet HaTorah. And that has nothing to do with doing away with the grace that Messiah offers us. Right? If we don't have the Father and the Son, Jesus, then we're Antichrist. But we're going to try to spiritually birth more Hebrews so we too, in these end days, can both grow strong and multiply. So when I see believers in the world today up in arms about the condition of man, getting all worked up and everything, well, we've read the book. Like I said, the judgment's set. We know what way it's going to go. When I see them do that, I've always had this saying, and it's just like, really, just chill out, Christian. Just chill out. Because it's written. It's going to happen. You're not going to stop it. Like I just said earlier, no kingdom now. No dominion theology is going to... We're not taking back this world for Christ before he comes. I don't believe it's going to happen. Now, we can talk about that later, but there's people who preach that, and I don't believe it. It's going to get to a point where man comes to the end of himself again, because most of us, because I am part of mankind, most of us are going to make the wrong choice. And it'll come to that point where Yah is going to have to step in. So I have that saying, just chill out, Christians. It's going that way. Don't go get all up in arms. Just decide what you're going to do. Because you know the most evil and perilous times are going to come at the end of the age. It's written. In the last days, it's going to be worse than ever. And history, what we know to be, or think to be true anyway, shows there's been some very trying and perilous times already. But the worst is yet to come. So, as believers, what do? We continue to strive for the good, to make that right choice. We continue to strive for the good, and to look at a scriptural example of that, I would like to go to 1 Corinthians and read chapter 5. And I'm going to switch over to the King James for this one. What do? I think this is a pretty good example. And this is Paul, of course. 1 Corinthians chapter 5. And I think I am going to read the whole chapter. And it reads that it is commonly reported among you that there is fornication among you, and such fornication as is not so much as named among the nations or the ethnos or the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife, his stepmom, probably. And of course back then, let's just admit it, men had more than one wife in a lot of places. The New Testament addresses that. So he may have just taken one of his father's other wives that wasn't his mother. And you are puffed up, and have not rather mourned, that he that hath done this deed might be taken away from among you. For truly I, as absent in the body, but present in the spirit, have judged already. I've already chosen the good in this matter, as though I were present, concerning him that hath so done this deed. In the name of Adonai Yahushua Mashiach, when ye are gathered together, and my spirit, with the power of our Adonai Yahushua Mashiach, to deliver such an one unto Satan. That's kind of harsh, ain't it? Said if he ain't going to choose the right, you need to choose the right. And deliver that one to the adversary. Give him over to Satan. And why does he say that? Even though it sounds kind of harsh. For the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of Adonai Yahushua. Your glorying is not good. Know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump? Now, if you throw away your Torah examples, you're not going to know what he's talking about there, are you? About the days of unleavened bread. So purge out, therefore, the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Mashiach, or Passover, now he's mentioning Passover too. Thought all that stuff was done away with. For even Mashiach, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. And this is many days after the resurrection and the ascension. And he's still talking about Yah's holy days and using them as examples for our lives. Therefore let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and emet, truth. I wrote unto you in a letter not to company with fornicators, yet not altogether with the fornicators of this world, or with the covetous, or the extortioners, or the idolaters, for then must ye needs go out of the world. So what did he just say right there? He's making a distinction, right? He's saying, this is something, and he's going to get to it in a little bit, but this is something I'm talking about within yourself. Because if you quit fornicating, if you quit making company with all the fornicators of the world, or with the covetous, or the extortioners, or the idolaters, you'd basically have to die, because they're everywhere in the world. For then you must needs go out of the world. But that's the things that the Messiah prayed too, right? What did he say? I don't pray that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the ways or the things of the world, that we may become that new lump. Verse 11, but now I have written unto you not to keep company if any man that is called a brother be a fornicator, or covetous, or an idolater, or a railer, or a drunkard, or an extortioner. With such an one, no, not to eat. For what have I to do to judge them also that are without? What's that my business, to judge those that are without? They're not part of our community. That's why I said, chill out, Christian. They're out there everywhere. And what business is that of ours? They got the same free choice that we have. They got the same free choice to call on him, or maybe he'll call on them. And then they can choose. So, for what have I to do to judge them also that are without? Do not ye judge them that are within? What about in your own group? Kind of like I read the other day about that one little moment of time when the brothers were finally at peace. And then the rest of the story, it's nothing but strife and conflict in the whole family. Verse 13, but them that are without, Elohim judgeth. Therefore put away from among yourselves that wicked person. That's the choice, among ourselves. We're not to be trying to, the world's going to go the way it's going. Like I said, it's written. It's going to happen. It's not going to get better. But we have that free choice right in front of us. Every day, right? Every day is the day of salvation. I die daily, it says in another place. Right? I mean, you got to make these choices for yourself. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all. We see, considering what I just read, we see many congregations today that don't know how to judge or choose the right that is within. Right? I mean, you've seen some of the stuff going on in the churches, congregations, what they're doing, what they allow, totally contrary to Torah. Because they believe that the standard, which is the Torah, from the very first church in the wilderness, that rock Jesus Christ followed them in back then, they think that the Torah, or Yah's instructions, which came from the Messiah himself, the one they say they believe in, does not apply. And therefore it is very easy for people to go astray when you say all God's instructions has been done away with, because now I'm under grace. And I'm not knocking grace. Boy, do I need it. Because like I've related before, my calling wasn't until I was in my probably early 30s. And I was so dirty back then, comparing my life to Torah, You know, it's not an easy thing. It's a long journey. So I had to learn all the ways of Yah before I could even start walking in the ways of Yah or begin to apply it to my life. So therefore, it is very easy for us to go astray if we're going to throw away all the instructions to the first church. It wasn't born in Acts chapter 2 or whatever people say it was. Back in the wilderness, where we're getting here, starting out this new book of Shemot, where they're going to come out. That's the church. That's the congregation. That's the kahal. Whatever word you want to choose. I really don't like church because I even seen a guy this week making the connection of the word church to circus. He's on a program called Wretched. I didn't watch it, but I seen the headline. Now let's go to a secular man. Dr. Phil. You guys know Dr. Phil, right? Dr. Phil, when he first came out, I remember he had two sayings that he used all the time. But Dr. Phil, he used to ask people who made bad choices, and how's that working out for you? Right? He used to say that all the time. And how's that working out for you? And the people would just look at him like, ugh. Because they know they made some bad choices. Well, Yah says the same thing in several places, and it even gets to the point where he's going to say, hey, those are the gods that you chose? When the day of calamity comes, let them save you, because that's what you chose. That sounds pretty harsh, but he gave us the choice. And that's the same thing. He may look at us and say, hey, you chose that. How's that working out for you? Not very good, huh? Now, I heard one the other day, and I told my wife, I said, that's about as plain as somebody could put it. And I thought it was like, where the rubber meets the road type of thing. He said, our spirits have been born again, but our minds and bodies have not. And we know that it's written, the spirit's willing, but the flesh is very weak. And our bodies will be born again if we endure to the end, like Mike said, overcome to the end. And our minds. And I'm not going to go into the whole Golgotha thing about the two parts of us, the guilty that believe and the guilty that don't, but we won't go there today. But our spirits have been born again, but our minds and our bodies have not. We will continue to need to fear Elohim and choose the right, like the Hebrew midwives did. It's going to be a choice either to the end if we're still alive, or till we come to our end, as David said in the last half Torah, I go the way of the whole earth. Either way, we're going to have to choose to the end, whichever end comes first for us. So to end, I chose a psalm that might help us all to choose and to learn his ways. So we're going to go to Psalms 25. Psalm 25. And he's even going to tell us in here about choosing. A psalm of David. Psalm 25. Unto thee, O Yah, do I lift up my soul. O my Elohim, I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. Pharaoh's coming after you. We've seen the one thing in Exodus 2 that he didn't really want Pharaoh. He didn't really want to do away with all of them. He wanted to have control over them. One of the easiest ways is to getting rid of the stronger part of the family, the male children. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. Yea, let none that wait on thee be ashamed. Let them be ashamed which transgress without cause. Show me thy ways, O Yah, and teach me thy paths. Lead me in thy truth, and teach me. For thou art the Elohim of my salvation. My salvation. On thee do I wait all the day. Remember, O Yah, thy tender mercies and thy loving kindnesses, for they have been ever of old. He's a God that doesn't change. All this stuff about a mean old God in the Old Testament and the loving Jesus in the New. No, we're reading here he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Remember not the sins of my youth, nor my transgressions. According to thy mercy, remember thou me, for thy goodness' sake, O Yah. Good and upright is Yah. Therefore will he teach sinners in the way. You got to seek his instructions to be taught. Isn't that what a disciple means? Go and make disciples. Go and make taught ones of the way. The humble or the meek will he guide in judgment, and the humble or the meek will he teach his way. All the paths of Yah, mercy and truth, unto such as keep his covenant and his testimonies. For thy name's sake, O Yah, pardon mine iniquity, for it is great. What man is he that feareth Yah? Him shall he teach in the way that he shall choose. You want to be taught the right way that you shall choose? There it is right there. You need to fear Yah like those Hebrew midwives, and he's going to teach you in the way that you shall choose. His soul shall dwell at ease, and his seed shall inherit the earth. Now, we've seen all this stuff going on around us and everything. But it really, if you're grounded firmly in your Yah, your Yahusha, the Father and the Son, you're still really kind of at ease, right? Because you know these things are going to come to pass. You don't get too shaken up because you've read it all. The secret of Yah is with them that fear him, and he will show them his covenant. Mine eyes are ever toward the Lord, or Yah, for he shall pluck my feet out of the net. He's telling you right there, there's people laying traps for you in this world. Just like we read in Exodus. People laying traps for you, whether it's setting a snare, a net, digging a pit. They're out to get you. Mainly the Satan. He's the one who guides it all. Turn thee unto me and have mercy upon me, for I am desolate and afflicted. The troubles of my heart are enlarged. O bring thou me out of my distresses. Look upon mine affliction and my pain, and forgive all my sins. Consider mine enemies. There again, he's letting you know you have them in this world. You know, they probably don't even know you and still plan things against you because they want that control and that power like Pharaoh did, that you would do their bidding, their work, bring in all the money for them. Consider mine enemies, for they are many, and they have hated me with cruel hatred. O keep my soul and deliver me. Let me not be ashamed, for I put my trust in thee. Let integrity and uprightness preserve me. Integrity and uprightness, that means you're choosing the right way. That choice is before you. If you choose integrity and uprightness, he says, let that preserve me, for I wait on thee. Now we know, I can never stress enough that if we sin, we have an advocate. That's the way the reason why he took all of our punishment upon himself. Because he knows as you strive in this world to do good, that you're going to trip, you're going to stumble, you're going to get up, you're going to dust yourself off, you're going to keep trying, keep learning, keep practicing. Rehearsals, right? Last verse. Redeem Yasharel, O Elohim, out of all his troubles. And he has redeemed us out of all his troubles. If you'll put your trust in the Redeemer, which is his very Son that became flesh and tabernacled, dwelt among us. So, I end today by saying, choose whom you are going to serve today. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for watching a teaching from Emet HaTorah. If you are ever in the Odessa area, we would love to welcome you to our Shabbat service, 11 a.m. every Sabbath. For more information or for more teachings, feel free to find us on the web, www.emethatorahodessa.com. Also, you can find us on Facebook. Thank you. God bless you and your family. Shalom.